your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast. Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Now streaming on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast as giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a fireside chat with the crew and special guest, Mario Marquez. He's coming back to give us some more insight on what's happening up on Capitol Hill in that area. But before we get in the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? Make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we're all about. If there's any way you can help us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear, it would be much appreciated. Also, big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project. If you don't know anything about them, make sure you go to their website, check them out, and try and help them out. That's tillvalhallaproject.com. And as always, there's a place for you Marines out there, the FMF sailors out there. Once you get out, that's right, it's the Marine Corps League. I'm going to try to point to it. There it is, Marine Corps League. So go out there and join them and just enjoy yourself because it is a good time. But that's mcleague.org. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, we're going to go ahead and go round robin real quick. Beck, how you doing?
Good. Life is good. Well, that's a lie. Life is horrible right now.
All right.
We're just in one of those seasons right now where, it's like, you have something big happen in your life and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of thing.
Yeah.
My shoe has dropped. My wife's shoe has dropped. Both my sister's shoes have dropped. My kids' shoes have dropped. I mean, everything's happening all at once.
All shoes are dropping. Yeah.
All the shoes have dropped. Yes.
Yeah.
We had to dish out a crap ton of money to have our floor replaced because we had a leak, and then our refrigerator crapped the bed, so we've got to replace that. And need a new back tire on the motorcycle, so that's going to be a little bit of a change. And then the brakes, rotors, and calipers all had to be replaced on the van, so that was a chunk.
Jeez.
I mean, it's everything, and it's all happened within like the last 5 weeks. So it's like,
good Lord, man.
When's it gonna stop? I'm tired of all these shoes dropping. But
hey, well, once it's all finished dropping, man, there'll be nothing else there. Yeah. So you're gonna be good.
We have replaced everything in the house and replaced all 4 vehicles and yeah.
Oh man,
but
I love it.
On a good note, I took my kids to contest this past Thursday, or my rock band ensemble. And we scored a superior rating.
Nice.
Yeah, so we got to come back to the school as gold medal recipients. I'm just real proud of the kids. They earned it. They did really well, and I was very, very proud of them. So
nice. Well, they didn't kick you out because of your music that you had to print off.
Oh,
so
no,
that's good.
Yeah, I had the appropriate proof of purchase.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Hey, well, Mark has now joined us. We'll hit Mark before we go over to Mario. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing outstanding, Andrew. It's a gorgeous day here in Southern California. We had some rain last week, and it's just it was bright, sunshiny yesterday. Got kind of warm. It's a beautiful day today. Same thing. We had the St. Patrick's Day parade yesterday.
Oh,
Marine
that's right.
Band San Diego, of course, led off the parade and just was phenomenal as usual. And I still got my Trump delight syndrome, and everything is just going great. Even there's a state assemblyman named Carl DeMaio who was pointing out publicly and very vocally all of the corruption that old Gavin Newsom has been doing. This crazy thing just wanted to borrow $4.2 billion from the California people or something like that.
Wow.
I'm not sure the amount, but it coincides with the exact amount that they're spending on illegal aliens to
Oh,
give them
really?
all the services and all the benefits and all
Wow.
that.
You know, I think I should borrow 4.2 million. I think I could do a
Bill,
lot with it.
bill,
Oh,
billion
billion,
with a
4.2
B,
billion. Yeah.
billion.
Even better, you know. I
Yeah.
could take that and use it, you know. I think we could do some good with it. Oh
Yeah. So
man.
it's just I'm just outstanding. I just cannot complain about anything now that my Trump delight syndrome keeps me motivated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad. So we got Mario. He's back with us this
Outstanding.
week.
Outstanding. We
Mario,
requested
how
you
you
back,
doing?
Mario.
It's an honor to be back, fellas. I have to put on my glasses because I can't see a damn thing right now for some reason. Once we go into night ops,
Yeah.
into grandfather mode because I can't see anything and kind of look at my notes and all that. But it's good to be back, man. We've had a pretty intense couple weeks since last
Oh
time,
yeah.
first time on, and I look forward to having a good little chat, giving you some updates, and just having a great conversation, and hopefully calm the herd,
Yeah.
and kind of talk through some facts. That way, we don't have veterans, hurting themselves or anybody else, because that's what can happen if we believe the full hype.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah,
Mario, I'm
absolutely.
with the Wounded Warrior Project, and I'm in the financial readiness program. And so we handle a lot of we do financial counseling, but we also do the emergency financial cases.
Yeah.
And but we get briefed all the time about, oh, this new administration, it's going to be worse for our veterans because of all this getting cut and everything. And I'm like, I said, it's there's just a lot of hype right now. We don't have facts. We don't have anything. I
Hmm.
said, but I know who to talk to. And so that's when we requested you to come back on and give us the true scoop about how the new policies are going to be affecting veterans. Because I tell them, I said, the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, all these organizations are not going to let veterans get injured in
Yeah.
all of this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And part of it is this is going so fast. The policy changes and the staff cuts is the terminology I'll use because it's not all doom and gloom. And while there are perceptions that it's cut everything and we'll figure it out later, sometimes it appears that way depending on where you're working or if you're impacted or if you're some of the group that's been let go specifically. But for me, I'm going to focus on VA specifically today. So even
Okay.
though there's jobs outside of, the Veterans Affairs Department, there are people that are being impacted at DOD, State
Hmm.
Department,
Correct.
Treasury, you name all the federal branches, and there's some impact. But for me, I think it's important that we look at what is the impact on Veterans Affairs, our benefits, our access to healthcare. And so
Absolutely.
that's what I
Yeah.
hope to cover today. So thanks for having me back on, man. I look forward to the conversation today.
Nice. And you said the weather there has been pretty good for you?
It's been kind of up and down. One day it's spring, today was summer, but with humidity, which is double the temperature that it's been over the past 3 months, really.
Yeah.
So windy,
Mm.
little bit of cold every other day, but it's getting better. Spring will be here in about 2 weeks, and we'll be fat and happy for about 30 days, and then summer will get here, and then it'll be hot.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the way it always works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But well, I guess we could jump into the questions that we sent you if you're good with
Sure.
that, Mario.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'll go ahead and read out the first one. What are the American Legion's primary legislative priorities for 2025 concerning Veterans Affairs, and how do you plan to advocate for them?
Yeah, so I'm going to start a little bit backwards on your question. I appreciate
Oh, okay.
that. So beginning in about June or July, we started doing an analysis of what really needed to be addressed when it came to the totality of the veteran sphere, access to
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, oversight, accountability, staffing numbers, a balance of care in the community, but also at VA medical centers, electronic health record modernization. So the
Mm.
record that's coming from DOD transferring over to VA, all of that. And we came up with a pretty good comprehensive agenda that we thought would be addressed regardless of who came into power. When the trifecta happened and the Republicans took, both parts of Congress and the administration, it actually fell right in with what we had planned because a lot of it has to do with accountability, efficiencies, fixing policies that had been implemented both during President Biden and Trump's first term. And so
Mm.
we wanted to see all those efficiencies kind of get rectified, more efficient access for veterans, and then moving forward, not just talking about the same things for 4 years.
Right.
I talked a little bit about this last time, but I think it's important to go over it all. I know we're going to go over some of these in detail, so I'm just going to scan over them. Um, so mental health care, veteran suicide, we're not winning the fight. Okay, we've sunk billions of dollars into this. The rates are steady or climbing depending on who you talk to. There was a study done by Duke, another organization, Warrior Partnership back in 2022 that said the real veteran suicide rate is about 24 per day. When you think about the probably accidents that may have become a suicide or overdosing on medications by accident, things of that nature, that's a pretty significant number. Um, and so I wanted to change the narrative from veteran suicide or suicide prevention to winning the war within, winning the war within your mind, your heart, your soul,
Right.
getting a more positive approach to how do we build resiliency in the veteran community, so that we can not only take action, peer-to-peer type of action, but also train and educate veterans, their families, and everybody in the community, not just the veteran community, about how to identify signs and symptoms in a veteran who is in distress so they can take action, because it's really a total community approach. And so
Right.
no longer is it just going to be on veterans and advocates of veterans to take this on. It should be a total community approach. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at the things that contribute. I'm kind of getting into one of the other questions, but contributing factors that we can get after left of the situation, vice being reactive, because most suicide prevention is kind of reactive
Yeah.
after the fact. Ending veteran homelessness,
Mm.
our number two top priority. We should never use those same words in the same sentence: homelessness and veterans. And still about 30 plus thousand veterans that are considered homeless, but there's always an influx of other veterans who are just teetering on the edge of becoming homeless or
Right.
not able to get permanently into a home or in a more stable situation. So we're really going to get after that here over the next couple of years, especially this Congress, and look at getting more resources. We do need more money for this because you do need tangible actions and things like smaller communities, veteran tailored communities, things of that nature to put them into a home with a community that they're surrounded by support. I talked a little bit about community care. That's our third priority. Community care is very expensive. Why? Because it's separate care that you pay providers out in the community when the VA doesn't have the time or specialty available at that local VA medical center to take care of that veteran at the quickest, most efficient time possible.
Right.
This is a big problem in rural areas, or what we call ultra rural areas, like out in Montana, Wyoming,
Hmm.
places like that, where a veteran may have to do a whole weekend trip just to go do a medical appointment, and take care of not only their health care, but a bunch of other appointments while he's doing that. So balancing community care is important.
Yeah.
Revamping the transition assistance program, our favorite, right? Who thinks TAP is the best thing going inside the Department of Defense? They've made strides over decades to improve that, but until we have accountability of our commanders, of getting our service members to take it seriously, investing almost as much time as we did on the front end to bring them in, on the back end to take, make sure they have a seamless transition into becoming a veteran. We're going to have issues like suicide. That first 12 months after a veteran exits the military is the most at risk period for
Right.
suicide. And a lot of those this transition factors like finances, relationship issues, reintegrating back into the civilian world that we've all been through, and we saw it was kind
Yeah.
of weird. Um, those are really tumultuous times. And so that transition assistance program, we're trying to do things like make it mandatory for VSOs to be at every single base globally so that we can not only tell them who we are, but have a warm handoff, give them somebody that they can come to, somebody
Hmm.
else that's already established, a veteran mentor is what I like to call it, so they can land on their feet. And so transition assistance is more than the base commander. It's that whole life cycle that I just talked about and
Right.
getting them a job or getting them into school. Um, Something else we're doing is there's a law right now at the moment that prohibits federal employees who want to become service officers and do claims work on behalf of veterans for free. They can't do it because they say that there's basically a conflict of interest. And so what we're
Oh.
trying to do is get a law changed to allow veterans to be accredited and become service officers so that they can provide free claim services for veterans. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people out there that happen to have a federal job and they just want to do it because they want to do it on their spare time. You can never have enough service officers, especially service officers that are free. The American Legion alone in 2024 secured 21 billion with a B, $21 billion on behalf of veterans for their initial claim.
Wow.
That doesn't include appeals and other types of indemnity compensation and other debt relief, which was
Hmm.
another 15 million or something like that that we secured. That's just the American Legion. VFW's got data, DAV's got
Right.
data, Wounded Warriors, a couple other folks have all that data. And so tied into that, we're trying to make sure that these companies that are for profit that are coming in, they need to be regulated because um, can you imagine if that 21 billion million, hundreds of millions of that went to companies because they do the claim for the veteran? That,
Yeah.
but this is America. We can do that. That's legal in some cases, but not without accreditation. And so
Hmm.
we're involved in all of that so that we can make sure that veterans get the best services possible for free and that none of their benefits are given to anybody else who does it. But that's a reality of the environment we're dealing with today. VA oversight and accountability. I'll talk a little bit about that later when it comes to employees. But for decades, there's been a perception or a reality that federal employees can't be fired if they're underperforming or they have violations that are ethical, criminal, whatever the case.
Hmm.
VA has the same problems, and so there's a bill out there right now that we'll talk about later that is going to help address accountability of employees, but there's also accountability of the VA in total. And so,
Mm.
um, I met with the VA OIG last week. I think it was Wednesday. Had a really good conversation and just reestablishing relationship with them to make sure that the VSO community, we're tied in. We know what they're looking at. We know what they're investigating. We know what we need to talk about and be looking at as well, or looking out for as we
Right.
as we engage across the 50 states and territories. Because we
Now,
are
that was the group that was there at that hearing that you'd sent that link to?
that was a different group. That was VA HR.
Oh, okay.
And there was other representatives, but no, VA OIG, I have not been in a hearing with them just yet, but I'm sure
Okay.
there'll be another one coming up and I'll
Yeah.
notify you all. Um,
Okay.
I spoke a little bit about modernization, IT systems, electronic health records.
Yeah.
VA is still a paper heavy organization. I don't, we just don't understand that. But at the same time, we have some of our older veterans that they prefer to fax, they prefer a phone call, they prefer a letter in the mail. Uh,
Yeah.
and so synchronizing modernization with still being able to give access to our veterans who prefer some of the traditional means of communication uh,
Hmm.
is something that's still a reality. The problem is, things get lost in the mail, things get lost when it's hard copy. And if it's something critical, a document that's needed right away, or it may take a couple weeks to get there and back, that by then you may have a veteran who doesn't get their health care in time for whatever reason.
Right.
And so all of those things on the veteran space specifically are important. And I think the last thing I'll talk about is what's called compensation and pension exams. Those are
Hmm.
those are required when VA wants to look at a specific condition that while you're going through your initial claims or your appeals process to validate whether or not a condition that you're claiming is connected to military service or not, and how is it
Right.
impacting you today. These exams used to be done primarily by VA, but now a majority of them are contracted out. So the problem with that is there's allegations and accusations that some of these third-party contractors are doing unnecessary exams because they get paid by exam in many cases,
Oh,
but they're also doing poor quality exams. For example, when I did one of my exams for a broken wrist, almost 5 years ago, they looked at my wrist. They measured some range of motion, but they didn't ask me any questions. They didn't ask me if it hurt. They didn't. It wasn't really a thorough exam. When it came back, guess what my rating was for my broken wrist that I still feel and have felt for 30 years? It was zero.
yeah,
It was service connected, but zero. But they didn't really give me due justice for that. And I'm just one example. So accountability of those third-party contractors, eliminating unnecessary exams and using as much as the military record book to validate your injuries and conditions is the way to go. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'll just mention a couple national security topics. I don't think we'll have time to go into that today, but military quality of life is our number one topic. We had a lot to do with this pay raise that just happened, both for single service members and also DoD in general. Lethality of the armed forces. You know, armed forces can't be lethal if you can't keep people and if you can't
Mm,
recruit quality people. Part of the problem is the civil military relationship. It's degraded. People trust in DoD the least than they have in decades. And so, what the American Legion and other VSOs are working on doing, but specifically us, is we're asking Legionnaires and veterans to go out and make the relationship with that recruiter, that local base, that military installation, cops, firefighters, anybody that is a veteran in your community who's in an official capacity, that will contribute to hopefully rebuilding the civil and military relationship because it is degraded, and until we fix that, I don't believe that, I know the Army has 1 year of successful recruiting. If you know anything about recruiting, you got to be successful 2 to 3 years minimum before it's a trend, and you got to keep that going.
right. Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
sold. I talked to Sergeant Major Marine Corps last night at an event, and we were talking about this, and I said, "You got to show me 3 years or more. I'm not going to believe that we're out of it," and we're not. So we have an obligation as veterans to take the fight to the streets to help the military get back on their feet when it comes to recruiting. And I think we're in a good position to do that. Revitalizing the defense industrial base. America can't convert to a wartime nation with the industry that it has today. We have some capacity, but we'll get it by Europe, China. I talked about a little bit previously. We just don't have the ability to resupply our own stocks from some of the combat operations we're involved in or supporting. And so the
Hmm.
American Legion's been working really hard to get military transition straight into defense industry, to get veteran small owned businesses into the acquisition process, especially rapid acquisitions, and giving options to DoD than the traditional five conglomerates, giant defense industry machines that kind of dominate all of that. Um, and I'll talk about one more, and that's POW MIA. We still have
Hmm.
over 80,000 missing service members, most of them from World War II. The bulk of those were lost deep at sea and they're deemed not recoverable. But I think about 37,000, the Department of Defense and DPAA and others deemed they're still recoverable. And so
Wow.
the POWMIA is more than a ceremony. It's more than a ceremony
Hmm.
at a mess night. It's more than a ceremony at a table at a ball. It's more than a flag at the post office or at your base or the White House. It's a family who's still at home that has not received closure. And so what the
Right.
American Legion is doing is we're going around the nation, going to elementary schools and other locations and teaching what that black flag is about, why it's important, why America does not need to forget, and why we need to continue to fund POW MIA operations globally because if we can get 37,000 of those people back, That's going to take a long time, but you know, we are known for bringing our war dead home, and so it's an honorable, noble cause, and that's kind of a wrap up. One of the links that I sent you, if you can post it on at some point, it's got our entire legislative agenda on there, and
Hmm.
there's some pretty good topics in there. I think people will be happy to see, or maybe even surprised that we do those kind of things.
Very nice. Yeah, and we will definitely post that up at the end so everybody sees it, and uh, yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. Whoa, the thing almost fell over. All right, you want to jump to the next one?
Sure.
So you kind of talked about a little bit winning the war within initiative, and then the significance to, whoop, cat's in the way. Uh,
Hey, Andrew, you
or
mind if I jump in there real quick?
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Just two things to echo on what Mario talked about was those older veterans and the communication methods. My wife works for the Injured Marine Separate 5 Fund. She's a case manager for the Welcome Home from Vietnam Fund, and that is so true because unless one of these Vietnam veterans who are in their 80s, unless they have a family member or support person doing the uh, technologically new stuff, they want to fax stuff, they want to mail stuff, they want to receive stuff by mail. But if they have a daughter, a daughter or son or someone younger who can do the scanning and stuff like that, receiving it, yeah, they want that old time stuff, and it does. They get gets lost somehow and doesn't get it. And the second thing, and I know we're probably going to touch on it with the suicide awareness and the veterans suicide. Uh, with the Wounded Warrior Project, we started a new protocol in the financial readiness program when we receive a case for emergency financial assistance. We are working with Columbia University, and we have a protocol of certain questions to ask the veteran about
Mm,
suicide because they know that one of the major reasons for committing suicide they found is financial distress.
mm,
So that's one thing that the Wounded Warrior Project has started is we have to ask certain questions uh, when we do an intake on someone who needs emergency financial assistance. So it's a one little step. It's one step towards helping out on
yeah.
our end anyway.
And out of curiosity, Mark, those questions and stuff, is that something that's posted somewhere that like any veteran could see and be able to ask those questions?
I do not know that, Andrew. I know we have, we read them we have to read them verbatim.
Right,
Are you considered, have you considered, do you feel like going to sleep and not waking up within the last month? Have you done
right. Yeah, yeah.
anything to try and end your life, Because they
Hmm.
know just asking a question is not going to trigger someone to go out and, oh, shoot, I guess that's a good idea. I'll go out and commit suicide. No, they
Yeah,
know that's not. It's just we have to be tactful on how we introduce the uh, questions, and start the
Yes.
process to answer the questions. And we got to make sure that we tell them from the start the answer to your questions are confidential, and your assistance is not going to be dependent upon how you answer these questions. Because we don't
right.
want them lying. Oh no, I'm fine. When they're
Mm,
not. We want to be that segue to help someone out if they need it. We can get them to we got people here at the Wounded Warrior Project, specifically for that.
yeah,
Uh, it's just one little step, that someone else can
I
help
can help
provide.
you out with that Columbia University. We're using the same protocol. So
Okay,
I'm glad we're lined up. And I'll talk about our Be the One campaign, which is where we connected with Columbia University when I
great.
get to that piece there.
Okay, I didn't mean to jump the gun here.
Oh, that's all right. I'm glad we're synced up. Like I would have never known that if you didn't jump in. So
Yeah,
that's good to know.
very nice. And then winning the war within the initiative and its significance addressing veterans, mental health, and suicide prevention. Did you want to go into any more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I want to
Okay.
talk about how we do that.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, the American Legion developed something called the buddy check program. It was a peer-to-peer program where American Legion folks started checking on their veteran buddies. Whether or not they were in the Legion didn't matter. They were just checking on their
Oh,
buddy. So it was a peer-to-peer peer support program. It became extremely vital during the pandemic because
Oh
everyone
yeah.
was isolated. We executed, I think, to date over 1 million buddy checks. And eventually, I testified this in Congress back in 2020 or 21, I believe. Um, VA has now adopted Buddy Check Week. It's a formal week that VA
Mm,
promotes nationally, and so it is now a formal program, and that began back again in 2019. We believe that the grassroots campaign, the peer-to-peer support, just checking on one another, it not only changes lives, but it saves lives.
yeah.
Most of the action occurs at the grassroots level. It's the veteran on the street, veteran on the ground, not us up here at the national headquarters that are really doing that. And so all of that over time led into what we now call Be the One. A couple years ago, I was sitting in a meeting and we were talking about how frustrated we were about counting the numbers of veterans we lost. And I said, we got to figure out a way to count the ones that are saved. We got to figure
Yeah.
something out. And one of the people in the meeting said, well, we got to figure out, we want to be the one to make a difference or something. And then we caught that phrase, and we adopted it as our formal mission going forward for several years. And it's all about reducing suicide by lessening the stigma that's associated with talking about mental health in the veteran community. Like I said it earlier, it's okay to not be okay. And to
Right.
Mark's point, right? You're on the phone with somebody, you read a very few specific, sentences and questions there. And at some point, what we've learned is veterans want to be asked bluntly if they're going to hurt themselves, or there's a time and place for that, right? And so um, we've trained over several tens of thousands of Legionnaires so far, and our
Wow.
goal is to train 100,000 veterans, I think, by the end of 2025. And so we're plugging away at to get these folks trained in the Columbia protocols that Mark's talking about. And I think that needs to be a nationwide movement. That doesn't need to be a Legion only thing. It's a real big deal. Yeah, I see you popping it up there. And so there's a lot of veteran videos and stories on there where you can click on them. They're really powerful. They're short to the point. They hit you right in the heart, and it makes you want to take action and step up. Um,
I like it.
yeah, legislatively, we are working on a bill called the Veterans Mental Health and Addiction Therapy Quality Act. It's a really long name. Uh,
Yeah.
but, winning the war within is about not only everything we just talked about, but it's also about therapy. It's about addressing addiction, alcohol,
Hmm.
other type of drugs, opioids, other factors that contribute to leading a veteran into potential suicidal behavior. So this study, excuse me, this bill would create an independent study to compare the effectiveness of mental health and addiction therapy across various treatment modalities,
Mm,
telehealth, inpatient, extensive outpatient, and residential care, just to give some examples.
right.
Assess health outcomes and also evidence-based practices, patient satisfaction, so what's working, and care coordination between VA and non-VA, because there's a problem when VA puts you out in the community. You either don't come back because you like it, or you want to come back because you didn't like it, but you could be lost in that transition
Mm,
in either direction. And so this study would look into all of that because, as I said earlier, the numbers are still steady and probably growing. So something else has to be done. And then the last thing we're doing on mental health is making sure that people know that we provide free veteran benefit assistance. Mark talked about it. There's a lot of other organizations out there, VFW, DAV, Wounded Warrior, um, PVA. There's a whole myriad of them that provide free services. And it's more than just your claim, right? It's financial services, loan forgiveness, you name it, grants and other things, education, all types of things that they're free. We have an entire network of service officers that are out there. And so getting veteran connected to immediate resources while they're going through the struggles, preferably for free, gets them on a positive footing and seeing light at the end of the tunnel. So uh, we're doing all that. The grassroots actions, we're doing legislative actions, we're doing, resource and referral. And for the American Legion, we're not necessarily specialists in mental health and things of that nature, but what we do have is access and people like you, our network. We refer them
Hmm.
out to you all. There's a myriad of entities out there that we connect veterans to on the spot. And so it's a community approach to this, and it's working well, but it can get a lot better. And so um,
Very nice.
onward we move with the fight against a veteran suicide.
That's right. Yeah, and there's plenty of organizations that are out there willing to help. And I mean, I've had a bunch of different organizations that have come on specifically about that, just to, for options for people to look into. And there's tons of them, like regional and those types of things. But they're everywhere. It's just a matter of getting plugged in.
Absolutely.
Let's see. How does the American Legion view the proposed Restore VA Accountability Act, and what impact do you anticipate it will have with VA operations?
Hey, I'm sorry to be late. Could I jump back in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Go
was on
ahead.
mute. Uh, so Mario, around 2009, 10, 8, 9, 10, down at MCRD San Diego, the Military Family Life Consultant Program was started there with the Recruit Training Regiment. And there's a woman named Marjorie Morrison who was our MFLAC. And when she started, it was with the program where, of course, you can't force an active duty military to talk to a psychiatrist.
Right.
However, you can force them to sit down with them for 10 minutes at a time. And so that was
That's
the
right.
program during pickup week. Every drill sergeant had to go in and sit down with the MFLAC, and that was all that was mandatory. You had to go in there and talk because a lot of these people said, "Oh, these people aren't going to talk to that psychiatrist. She's a civilian, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah." Well, this woman was so good at building rapport that time ran over. They had to extend the time out from 10 to like 20 minutes, and then they had to have her come back for this. It was very very successful. Um, and then after she stopped working with the program after a few years, she wrote a book. When you're talking about that one of those programs, she wrote a book called The Inside Battle,
Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to
and
find that.
The Inside Battle. Marjorie Morrison. I actually wrote the foreword for it,
Oh, wow.
and because
Awesome.
when I retired in July of 2012, I uh, helped her start building an organization called Psych Armor,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
we went around the country teaching medical and mental health professionals how to work with veterans because the statistics prove that some of these veterans that have committed suicide within weeks had seen a mental health professional, usually a civilian provider.
Yeah.
And they said so where was the disconnect? Why couldn't they build that rapport and get it going? But Marjorie herself, who had no type of military connection whatsoever, except her father was in World War II. That was her only connection. Uh, she said it's not their fault that they don't know how to build rapport. So we built this
Yeah.
Uh-oh, we lost him.
program. It was a 5-day program where the first 2.5 days I'd go from the Department of Defense all the way down to a rifle platoon, or actually a squad, and then she would take over on the psychological part. But then we took a grant from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for $1 million, so they wanted everything put online, and so we put everything online, and I stopped working for them because I wasn't having traveling around the country teaching, which I liked, uh, and so then after a while she uh, turned over the company to somebody else, and she went on and did other things. But I think if we're working on this inside battle and if we're doing about getting veterans out to these civilian providers, I think she would be a great one to call back in and uh, give them the down and dirty on the best way for a civilian provider to connect with a veteran.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good scoop. If you have contact with her, I'd love to get that
I do.
introduction.
I just talked to her about a month ago also.
Awesome.
Man, moving right along. We're solving all the world's problems today.
Yeah.
I mean, but Andrew can tell you, you remember Marjorie.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Most definitely. Yeah, it's getting a veteran to open up. They're not going to open up to just anybody. You got to be able to build rapport.
Right.
So, you know,
I think you asked me about the Veteran Accountability, excuse me, a VA
hmm
Accountability Act, correct? Yeah. So
yeah.
there's a bill out there. That bill specifically would comprehensively reform the accountability process at VA for accountability for employees, right? Whether it's SES level all the way down to your basic employee who's working at VA. And this has resurfaced because back in 2017, what was then called the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act
Mm,
passed Congress with overwhelming bipartisan and stakeholder support. And then President Trump signed it into action. However, in 2021, a court of appeals found that the act had been misinterpreted, and so it's been watered down over the years, and it's been difficult for VA and courts to hold employees accountable, especially when you have things like unions involved and that
mm,
sort of process and procedural things you have to go to. So this bill would give SecVA the explicit authority to remove, demote, or suspend supervisors for misconduct or performance issues. It also spells out procedures for preventing the law to be overturned in the future and codified in the law a little more permanently. And so it includes things like adding how long a process should take, the appeals process, judicial review, investigative termination procedures, whistleblower protections, and actions that demoted individuals can take. It also covers actions specifically on how to hold senior executives accountable, the types of procedures that are disciplinary, and then how to make that process, faster so that it's not getting drawn out. And so we believe that this bill will strengthen the authority at VA to make sure that VA is focused on serving veterans with the highest standards and having the highest quality employee whose focus knows that they're going to be held accountable, but they're also backed by their leadership. So we think it's a good bill. We back it 100%, and we just testified on it last week specifically. So it's actually good timing that you asked me about this.
very nice. Did you, Mark or Vic, did you have any other follow-up questions on that?
Nope, not this guy. I'm just
Okay.
gonna some of the websites that I'm trying to see if I can locate somewhere he's talking about in these websites and see if I can get them up while he's talking about them.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Next thing was, what's your stance on the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, and how do you believe it will affect veterans' rights and due process?
Yeah, so this is a complicated one here, but the bottom line is the American Legion believes in the Constitution. And so every veteran has a right to, the Second Amendment, bottom line. And
Yeah.
so because of a fiduciary program that was started back in 1930, where, it involves veterans who had issues managing their own finances due to mental health injury, illness, being older or having injuries that incapacitates them. A fiduciary is appointed to manage their issues for them. And
hmm
so part of the problem is with that requirement came a process that identified a veteran as being a mentally incompetent person or a person who, because of injury or disease, lacks the mental capacity to contract or to manage his or her own affairs, including disbursement of funds without limitation. Um, However, this determination does not include any consideration of whether the person is considered to have a propensity for violence or considered
Mm,
a threat to themselves. Now, because of the Brady Act in 1993, uh, people that are involved in certain types of crime or issues are not allowed to carry a weapon, as you all know.
Right.
And so, because of this situation involving fiduciaries and veterans, um, a disproportionate amount of veterans, about 263,225, which is 90% of the cases that have been reported, are by the VA. So VAs uh, in larger amount than any other organization reporting a lot of veterans to what's called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. And so we
Mm,
believe that that requirement of reporting veterans to the NICS system when they require fiduciary or other types of support, it's not justified. And so when compared to other
interesting.
federal agencies, this is a stark overrepresentation of veterans in the NICS system, and it needs to change. It's unfair. Veterans are losing the right to carry a weapon when they've never been considered necessarily violent or a threat to anyone. Um,
Right.
so this law would would fix that, and that situation is, I put a note here, it's an injustice for veterans to lose their Second Amendment rights because a judge deemed a financial fiduciary was warranted. I mean, it makes no sense. There's no connection between the ability to manage your finances and violence ideations. And so we need to fix this process, and we oppose any legislation that infringes or stops a veteran from exercising their constitutional rights.
That's
And so
awesome.
that
Awesome.
is our basic position on that. It's a very important situation. We're all over that. Like you know what?
I
Pick one.
like it.
Pick a saying.
Yeah, yeah, there's plenty to say.
Yeah.
Very nice. Let's see. Given the VA's budget request of, what is it, 369.3 billion for fiscal year 2025, what are your thoughts on its adequacy in meeting the needs of veterans, especially concerning disability compensation and healthcare services? That
Yeah,
is a
this
big one.
is yeah, this is probably the biggest conversation going on right now. And one of the reasons this whole Doge connection to VA is even being discussed. The VA's budget has grown exponentially over the last, 10 to 20 years. Uh,
Hmm.
and so to get to your point, I think this budget is adequate, but it needs to be bigger. Now,
Hmm.
as you look at where this money's spent, what's needed, and why, um, the average VA facility is about 60 years old.
Oh,
That's
wow.
It's almost like the barrack situation. It's the same problem, actually. And so
Yeah.
you have an infrastructure problem. Buildings are very expensive, and so there's no way that we're going to be able to do all of that without just completely elevating this another 100 billion a year just to get after
Hmm.
the infrastructure piece alone. And they're usually, cost overruns and all these issues that elevate the prices of what it costs to just the infrastructure alone. But when you talk about healthcare, when you talk about community care, which I mentioned earlier, all of that needs to continue to get funded. There are some cuts this year in some areas. I don't want to go into detail, but I sent you a link for the Independence Fund.
Hmm.
If you can pull that report up, I encourage every veteran to read that. That's put together by PVA, DAV, and VFW. They've been doing that for quite some time. They are really the experts on the details of the VA budget. Uh, I think it's a good product. It's not as thorough as the VA budget proposals, which come out in about March or April for the next year.
Hmm.
Um, but you're going to find that the independent budget actually forecasts a little bit higher. And if you remember earlier this year, there was a big old scandal, a little bit of drama about VA being $12 billion short. I think
Right.
it's the end of last year. Well, the independence budget actually forecasted very close to that, whereas VA ended up
Mm.
being about $12 billion short. But then they found the money. And so, this This is put together by three veterans organizations. It's simpler, it's shorter, it's to the point. It doesn't get deep into the science. But if you want
Right.
a quick VA budget 101, this is about the best you're going to get without going into extensively long and complicated explanations involving law and all of that type of stuff. So uh,
Right.
I think the budget is large. I think it's justified to see where we can downsize and make VA more efficient.
Hmm.
It's going to be difficult to do that because of what I said. The average VA facility is really old. Um, because we're sending veterans more and more out into the community because VA hospitals are backlogged, people are upset. You're having to spend more money out in the local doctors. The local doctors charge a lot more
Oh
than
yeah.
the equivalent prices at a VA. And so I wouldn't be surprised um, if this budget, shouldn't be closer to 400 billion a year. That's about half of the defense budget. And so now you're talking 1.2, trillion dollars just between those two departments. And so I can understand why they're looking at how to downsize and right size the budget. So a little bit more complicated of a conversation here, but my opinion, this budget right here still does not do justice for where we need to be based on the factors right now. Only 9.1 million veterans are registered for VA out of the 18 million that are alive today. Only half.
Wow.
And we are trying to recruit more veterans to go to VA healthcare. So
Yeah.
can you imagine
That's
what's going to happen to
amazing.
this? Yeah. Um,
Wow.
So that's kind of my thoughts on the budget. I encourage folks to read that. As we go forward this year, we're going to be fighting for some, special adjustments, prosthetics, mental health. It's nowhere close to where it needs to be, not even close. And I don't even think that where they're putting the mental health dollars is even in the right place. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I'd like to see an increase in funding in different ways in some of those areas. They're focusing on leasing versus building new buildings. It's cheaper, believe it or not, because it's all inclusive. It comes with their own maintenance, and instead of building a new VA medical center, so a little bit of
Right.
balance work going on with that too. So it'll be interesting to see where the budget goes going forward based on
Hmm.
those things that I talked about. But this is the second largest budget in America's um, you know, fiscal environment. So
Right.
it's a tough subject to talk about. And I think it's going to be cut down. They just need to cut in the right areas. And we're coming up with some recommendations. We're still doing the research. I'm not really prepared to talk about where we're at because of what's going on. There's always going to be a touch point to reducing healthcare if you're not careful or
Oh
access to
yeah.
benefits, right?
Yeah. Wow. All right. Let's see. Either of you have anything, Mark, Vic?
Not on that.
I don't want to. I don't want
That's
to.
pretty surprising about only that many the veterans are registered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
9.1 million.
Wow. And then you said it was 18
18,
million.
about 18 and a half.
Yeah.
It's shrinking right now. If you think about America's population, we're what, 350
Mm.
million, but
Yeah.
18% are veteran, or 18 million, excuse me, are veterans from all the way back to World War II. That's
Yeah.
a large percentage. That's not a
Hmm.
large percentage at all. And we're not recruiting. Our military is not keeping pace at the rate that the nation's growing in size, right?
Oh wow.
It's
Yeah.
still at 2 million. So you think for a 350 million population, we should be able to recruit a 3 million person force or 2 million
Hmm.
five, but we're not. And it's more expensive than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So
Holy cow.
yeah, that's part of the problem. But that all bleeds over into VA because, the bigger military, the more conflict, the more bills on the back end that you're going to have to pay to our veterans.
Yeah. Very true. All right. Let's see. How is the American Legion responding to reports of planned workforce reductions within the VA, and what implications do you foresee these cuts having on veteran services?
Yeah, so this is really the biggest topic of today. Everything else I think we talked about is really important, but my hope is that everybody who watches this is kind of toned down, waits for the facts, and sees what's really going on, where the
Yep.
cuts are being made. What the American Legion has done is we're sifting through information, misinformation, media hype, a divided Congress who's also very disconnected not only with America but with each other, with their own
Hmm.
base on all sides. And so we're working to reduce fear by focusing on the facts. You haven't seen the American Legion come out throwing blows and blasting the administration or any certain anybody because although they have fired 2,400 veterans from the VA or employees, excuse me, not all veterans, but employees, it has still been unclear what the impact has been. The Secretary of VA, I met him personally, and he has reassured us that they're going to make a very calculated strategic assessment and approach to how they do this. Now, that was on February 25th. A couple of days after that, there was a leaked memo, which I'm sure you all have heard about, that said VA may be terminating an additional 83,000 employees. Now, where does the 83,000 come from? Um, VA back in 2019 was about 83,000 people smaller. Okay. So they're referring to putting VA back at the goal of the 2019 end strength because they feel that's a little more affordable um, people wise. And so that leaked memo obviously, unfortunately, caused hell. And VSOs begin to get a little more involved. Congress was very hyped up at our hearing that we had. It's just politically tense situation. And so for the American Legion, I think I said it before, we're apolitical, we're non-political.
Hmm.
And so we are bipartisan or multi-partisan because we have people from all parties, but operationally and officially, we are congressionally chartered and we're not a political organization. So we have to go right down the middle. And my goal
Hmm.
as the lead for the American Legion for all DC operations is to operate calm, cool, and collected, look for the facts, continue to talk to all sides of the administration, all of Congress, and you make deals and you have conversations, behind closed doors, but also in public so that people know what's really going on. And so we've done all that. The other thing we did is once the 83,000 leak memo was released, we couldn't stay quiet anymore because that was a surprise to everyone.
Yeah.
So the American Legion is we released a commander's message, and inside that commander's message, I put a survey. It's called a American Legion Impact Survey, and I worded that very carefully. I didn't say, are you impacted by President Trump or are you impacted by X, Y, or Z? What I did say is, have you been impacted by current policy changes or staffing reductions? And if so, tell us your story. Um, what ended up happening is we have about almost 5,000 responses as of yesterday. 65% are no impact, not at all.
Mm.
We're happy, they're fine with VA. About 30% have an impact, but it's probably pre-existing. So they were already
Hmm.
pissed off at VA from their claims a year or two ago. Or it's
Yeah.
I'm still mad that I can't get medical appointments and it's been, you know, President Trump has been in his seat for about 60 days. So
Yeah.
it's most of it appears to be pre-existing. And then there's a very small percentage, I don't know the numbers yet, but it's probably going to be like a quarter of a percent where people have been fired or they're saying or their perception is that policy changes or staffing cuts may have impacted. We do have about 5 or 6 people who were fired that have actually taken the survey. So, I'm going to be fair and say this is what we're seeing. We can't decipher whether or not this portion of the population was pre-existing or not, but it appears to be. And then I'm going to share this information with my leadership, with Congress, with VA, and we're just going to tell them what we see, right? We're not capturing the entire veteran population, but it's a
Yeah.
snapshot. And I think, one of the reasons I did this, and it kind of pissed some people off, but I said, listen, I can't get any factual information from everyone. Everyone's throwing allegations out there. Secretary saying this, right? Depending on where you're at in Congress, they're saying this or that. I said, we're doing our own survey. And so that way, when we come out, we're going to give our version, our information. We're also putting together job fairs. We're putting together former veteran skilled, or excuse me, former federally skilled employee job fairs. So we
Mm.
target them without marketing as a you got fired by the administration. We're just going to do something about it. We're going to take tangible actions that help people out, veterans in need as we see them. Because everybody else is
I
kind of
like that.
yelling, screaming, and pissed off. We're actually going to do something, present a product, and then help veterans out because that's what we're here for. We're here to help veterans and make sure they're taken care of. And legislatively, my job is to go in and find out what's really going on and to protect, our benefits, our access to health care,
Right.
make sure that everything that the secretary says he is doing is fact and that we hold them accountable. Because even though we're not a watchdog, that is our responsibility is to, oversight and observe what's going on behalf of the veterans.
Right.
We're also doing media interviews. I'm on a podcast now, right? I've done a couple of these. I've gone on very liberal outlets. I've gone on conservative outlets.
Yeah.
And my team is doing the same, my legislative director and my Veterans Affairs directors. And so, the veterans are our true north. We're going to focus on the veteran. We're not going to focus on the politics. And there's a couple other
Nice.
organizations out there that are kind of, following our lead. And so, you got to remember, veterans, believe it or not, are, I don't know what percentage, but there's Democrat and Republican veterans, and they
Oh
vote
yeah.
accordingly. So the veteran community is not unified
Hmm.
either. And so my goal is to pursue the facts, focus on the veteran, make sure our benefits are taken care of, and stay out of the heavy political tension because it's going to get us nowhere.
Yeah.
If we're distracted by that, who's actually looking out for the veterans, right?
Hmm.
So I'm doing a little bit of all of that. I'm meeting almost weekly, if not daily at times, with my peers at VFW, some of the other big VSOs, and also some of the other smaller VSOs.
Hmm.
Why? Because we want to be unified. We want to understand what we're seeing. We want to keep communicating. We want to be going up to Capitol Hill with a united front and message when it's allowable. But we also have our independent charters and we have leadership and membership we have to answer to. And so
Yeah.
I'm balancing all of that as I do my regular duties and do things that we have going on, like testifying for other issues. And
Hmm.
it's pretty intense, but you know what? I tell my staff, they're all veterans except for a few. I said, how many of you have been to combat? 70, 80% of them raise their hand. I said, this ain't combat, and it's going to get a lot worse than it is right now. It's going to get way more politically tense. I need you focused. I need you to trust me, and we need to
Mm.
keep our heads on a swivel because we can handle this. We're the American Legion. And I think it's
Yeah.
working. We'll see. We'll see what the next, round of laws that come down. But you just got to stay focused. For us who are advocates,
Hmm.
we have to get ground truth and we have to relay the information to the veteran community. And that's
Yeah,
that's what I
absolutely.
hope I'm doing today with you all because it's pretty tumultuous and tense. Like it doesn't matter who you are. It
Yeah.
really is. And there's veterans out there. We have about two or three confirmed suicides that we know of already.
Mm.
And I don't know why. I'm just getting stories and information. But the big thing is we just need to not to be dismissive of people, but see if they need help and assistance, and then let the politics work themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
that's what we're doing on on the job cuts. I didn't even talk about DoD and some of the other departments who have also
hmm
lost staff, but also veteran staff, and so we're keeping an eye on that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I like what you're doing. And staying that apolitical, non-political side. I think it's very important, especially from the veteran service organizations. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Believe me, it's not that easy because people have personal beliefs, and I remind my staff all the time that when we brought you on board, you kind of reassured us that you can separate your personal life and
Mm.
beliefs from your work if you believe in the mission. And so
Yeah,
it's been challenging, but we talk to them, a lot, and they're hanging in there and they're doing a good job. So I'm happy.
very nice. Yeah, very good. All right, let's see. In what ways is the American Legion collaborating with the VA to promote post-traumatic growth among veterans dealing with PTSD?
Yeah, I think for that, I'm just going to talk broadly here because for a lot of this, it's really the peer-to-peer, having a community, having a team around you, surrounding yourself with people that you trust, even if it's a small circle, involving yourself in the right network that's going to keep you in a positive developmental growth going forward, uh,
Hmm.
whether it's financial or relationship or whatever the issues are that affect you. If it's a combat thing that's just burning in your head because you can't let it go, getting you in front of people that understand you, that have been through it, the therapy sessions, the counselings, all of that's very important. Even something as simple as a trigger lock. If you're the one that
Mm.
needs the trigger lock because it's important to you, we do that. We'll get those to veterans. We're in touch with organizations that, a veteran can lock up their weapon in a safe, or they can lock it with a trigger lock if they want to be extra safe, whatever the case, right?
Yeah.
But it's being a part of a network, being a part of an organization like the American Legion or VFW or DAV. I completely understand the value of these organizations tenfold now from when I was on active duty and even when I got out. I had no idea that we did lobbying and fighting for all the things we're talking about.
Right.
So I think just, you know, looking out for each other, especially when things are going right, because that's when we're surprised, is when we think everything's going right and it really isn't for someone out there, right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of a very broad answer. I don't know if Mark maybe or Vic maybe has some comments on that post-traumatic growth, but um, that's a never-ending task. That's all the way until we put our brothers and sisters away with a flag on their casket because they lived a wonderful long life.
Yeah.
That's when post-traumatic growth stops.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Uh-oh. We're screen sharing. Oh, there he is.
Yep.
What is that? Oh, yeah. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. Okay.
And I know we don't like to use disorder a lot anymore, but um, you know, it's still out there as an official product. So we
Right.
have a lot of resources on there as well as connections to other organizations that
Very
address.
nice.
But I'm really happy at the amount of investment that the Legion specifically is putting in on Be the One. Our states and cities and local posts, they're really embracing this. I mean, they're making it a mission at every post as much as possible, and it's growing.
Yeah.
This has become a main theme and mission across, many of our 12,000 posts. So we hope it
Very
spreads
nice.
to all the VSOs and everywhere. It's not a Legion thing. It's an us thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. It says, how do you assess the current administration's commitment to improving veterans' access to mental health care and alternative therapies?
Yeah, so I talked to the secretary about this during our meeting, and he's highly focused on reducing veteran suicide. It's one of his top priorities. He's also committed to improving the mental health care that we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
He's only 60 days into it, but I think not only is everything that's going on with the tense situation with job loss and veterans being worried about their care and benefits maybe getting cut, even if it's not true. Um, I think VA is going to be accelerated into having to provide and be
Mm.
more readily available to take on mental health cases and support because of the environment we're dealing in, right? And so
Hmm.
what the VSOs are doing is we're making sure that happens. We're making sure the Night 8, the Veterans Crisis Line is not impacted. People that were allegedly hired, we raised hell when that we heard or fired. We raised hell when we heard about that, and they were immediately put back to work, even though they were back office people. We're like, it doesn't matter. The back office people support the guy on the phone, so leave
Yeah.
them alone. So,
Yeah.
those kind of trial and error mistakes, they have to be more calculated about that, and we're make sure that we're communicating with the administration on that, and also the president indirectly through VA. There's a couple issues though, right? This is where we're struggling. So there are three positions that are gapped right now. These are very important positions. The first one is VA always has a senior advisor to the secretary who is
Mm.
also the liaison to all the VSOs. That position is still gapped. They have not
Oh,
appointed
wow.
that person. And because that person's not appointed, we don't have a single point of contact that we can go to get
Mm.
information, RFIs answered, things of that nature. So that needs to be filled because it's creating confusion, communications breakdown. Remember the 9 common elements found in a combat environment when we used to do prac?
Yeah. Yeah.
Communications
Yeah.
breakdown was one of them. Well, that's what's going on is they need to fill that. There are two other
Oh
positions
man.
that are gapped right now. One of them is at the White House. The senior advisor to the president for Veterans Affairs has still not been appointed, and the White House liaison to the Veteran Service Organization, so the VSO liaison at the White House. Those two positions there at the White House are still not populated. Why is that important? Because when VA makes us upset or they're not answering or we just want to go talk to another person that's above the cabinet, the secretary at
Right.
VA, we go to the White House. We have quarterly meetings with them, but those two positions haven't been filled. It's been chaotic. I think that once we can get them filled, we'll have a regular audience with the White House. Secretary of VA will know we have an audience with the White House, and that'll improve communication, in that triangle. VSOs to
Right.
VA, VSOs of the White House, White House and VA, everybody synchronized, and it makes everything for the veterans a little bit better. And so all of that feeds into your question about mental health care, because if we have all the pieces in place, it will reduce tension throughout the entire veteran space and community, because we'll be able to get more direct information from, White House and VA.
Yeah. What could we do on our end to try to get them to go ahead and pick somebody for these positions?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. The first thing, and what I'm doing is I'm putting the heat on Congress. Here's why. Congress has been ineffective. They're very divided and they're divisive. So
Mm-hmm.
they are leaning on the VSOs to try to, save the day and get keep VA from being torn into, which is justified. That's why we exist. But
Mm-hmm.
Congress passes law. Congress has authority. Congress has accountability. And Congress has to do their job when it comes to everything I just talked about, not just the VSOs. And so, what I would offer is everybody who's listening to this podcast, all your friends, write your congressmen and women, write your senator, tell them, why haven't these positions been appointed at VA or the White House? It is of extreme and utmost priority and importance. And look, I get it. They're dealing with a lot of stuff at the White House, but we still need these positions filled so we can function and reduce the tension that I was talking about. Um, Once members of Congress start hearing from the grassroots, the people that put them in their seats, it has a
Mm-hmm.
whole game-changing effect compared to us in DC going to them, because
Right.
now their voters are putting the heat on them, and that has a little bit more weight than even what we do here in Washington. So that's the easy button. Everything else I'm working on. I'm talking to Secretary, I'm talking to the White House, but you guys can help by putting the heat on Congress.
Most definitely. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a challenge. We accept. So for all the listeners out there, we're gonna put that info up too, so you can hit up your local congressman and make sure that we're pushing those things and get those positions filled. All right. Let's see. What measures have been taken to ensure that veterans are not discouraged from seeking mental health care due to concerns about losing their constitutional rights? You kind of talked about that a little bit already.
I did, but unfortunately that law's still in place, right? However,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different ways for a veteran to go get help, and you can probably give me five or six yourselves, other than what I mentioned. But the VA vet centers, those are local community mental health centers where a veteran can go to and get almost immediate mental health care, somebody to talk to. Obviously, 988, getting on
Yeah.
that helpline, getting connected to some of those resources. Programs like Be the One, I talked about it extensively.
Hmm.
Our grassroots, join the American Legion, join VFW, join these organizations that are in the community physically. Um,
Right.
and insert yourself into a network of people you trust and you can talk to. And you will find that collectively we'll help you find solutions to getting you comfortable with not being okay. And then also, reducing the stigma of just getting help. So those are some of the things that we are doing, but it's a lot of veterans don't not really know about the impact of fiduciary until they're in that situation. But
Yeah.
what I will tell them as they listen to this podcast is don't let that deter you from getting help. We'll
Mm.
worry about that down the road, because that's why we're fighting for this legislation, so that they don't inadvertently report veterans who should not be reported to for a fiduciary concern to the NICS system, which would, allow you to potentially
Right.
not have a weapon. So it's a little bit of all that, but any thoughts from you all? I think I would appreciate some supporting fires here. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of organizations out there, and we've have them on pretty regular, different ones. And Mark works for one that, you guys help with all that type of stuff too. But there's plenty of organizations out there, and it's really just a matter of reach out to somebody, whether that be, a friend, somebody you served with at some point in time. If that person doesn't know specifically who to get in contact with, then it's just one or two phone calls away,
Yeah.
and in order to find that, or a quick search on Google, anything like that is going to be able to put you in contact with some people. But there's definitely organizations all over the country that are willing to help and will go out of their way to help.
And
Yeah.
especially a government agency, anybody who starts balking or him and hawing about helping a veteran, and even especially when they don't understand the effects of post-traumatic stress and things like that. And I always just straight out tell them, U.S. government broke them, U.S. government bought them.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that's a good
VFW
point.
said in their testimony, I think last week, honor the contract,
Dang right.
meaning
Mm,
I signed a contract to serve the nation, and you still have to take care of me for the rest of my life,
Yep.
basically.
yeah,
And I
that
agree
was
with
good.
that. Yeah. The other thing is, I think we have to address as a community, we have to continue to look out for those factors that contribute to suicide that I talked about earlier,
Hmm.
financial distress or situations, the
Yep.
relationship problems, health concerns, addiction concerns, opioids, all those things that lead to a veteran thinking that they're in a situation they can't get out of. If we can reduce or cut those out of a veteran's life as soon as we identify them, somehow we may never get to a point where that veteran is feeling that way. And so
Yeah,
preventative measures are more important than ever.
very true. Yeah, and I always talk about it, but reaching out to your buddies, if you're in a good place, reach out to the buddies that you served with. There's easy ways to do that on a regular basis. You can put it, what I like to do is on Facebook when it comes up for birthdays. Uh, I always try to send a birthday message, but I send it, in a private message to the individual, and I was like, "Hey, happy birthday! Hope all's going well." Da, da, da. And 9 times out of 10, that starts a conversation.
Yeah.
And it could be that one conversation that helps somebody. But those conversations have led to many other conversations later down the road that, I need help with this or that, but it's just a matter of reaching out. If you're in a good place, reach out to somebody because guaranteed
And
there's
even
somebody
with
out there that's not.
that's right, with the Wound Warrior Project, and their symbol, one veteran, one carrying the other one. We
Hmm.
always say sometimes you're the one being carried, sometimes you're the one carrying. So which one are
Yeah.
you today? You might be carrying today, but then you might need that assistance and be the one assisted later. So always do your part.
All right. I think the last question was kind of the stuff that you've answered before as well, Mario. But it says, how can veterans and families become more involved in advocacy efforts led by the American Legion to influence VA policies and programs?
Yeah. So www.legion.org, legion.org. Um, there's a whole bunch of drop downs, but one of them is called advocacy. And that'll lead you to our grassroots campaigns. That'll lead you to our legislative agenda, uh, at Be the One campaign, all of that. Um, and really is just get involved at the local, let know that your congressman or woman or senator will absolutely answer when you call or message them. They're required and obligated to do so. When hopefully you're a part of a veteran service organization, but let's say you're a part of the American Legion. Every week we send out what's called a grassroots newsletter. And in that newsletter, you will see which bills we're fighting for and advocating for. And it's a simple click of the button. It already fills out which congressman or woman, your district, all that after you register. And it sends them our grassroots saying, we're fighting for this bill. I want you to vote for it year round. and it's really simple, and you can feel like you're a part of the process legislatively. Most veterans have never heard of that. And we do all the work for you. All you have to do is register, sign up for the bill you like, and hit send. And we will automatically contact your Congress member, and they will respond to you in via email, most likely, in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's a powerful tool. When we testify, the more members that the VSOs have that are a part of our organization, the more powerful that our testimony comes across. Uh,
Mhm.
when I testify, I say on behalf of the 1.6 million members of the American Legion, that's a big deal. We're the largest VSO in America.
Mhm.
All organizations are going through a decline because people just don't get involved into organizations like this as much as they used to. So connecting with veterans, encouraging them to join a VSO because of the work that we're talking about today. Most people don't think that it's only about the local post level going to have a beer or smoke. That's just a very basic part of what we do. Our influence is far reaching, and I would encourage, I never try to recruit people for the Legion, but I like to let our work speak for itself, but I would like to see more veterans across the nation joining the VSOs, especially now that we're fighting to make sure your veteran benefits are protected and your access to healthcare is guaranteed. Too many veterans kind of sit idly by and they just complain, but they don't want to be a part of the organizations. You don't have to participate in anything, but I'll tell you how salaries like mine and all my staffs, I have 80 people total, we're funded by our membership, by the membership fees that they pay, even we pay. And it's important because without that, we would not have a voice in Washington, D.C. And so a lot of the smaller VSOs really don't have the access, influence, and voice that we do. And so that's
Mhm.
why it's important to be a part of organizations like these.
Yeah, and some of what are the bigger ones? You had the American Legion, VFW.
Uh,
Uh,
Disabled American veterans, uh,
mhm.
Vietnam Veterans of America, um, Paralyzed Veterans of America is not as large. Those are kind of the bigger ones.
Mhm.
Wounded Warrior is a prominent organization as well. I work with them. Jose Ramos is the VP that I work with in DC a lot. Um,
Now the Marine Corps League is up there as well.
well, Marine Corps League is not really considered. I don't know if it's considered a VSO. Maybe it is.
I think it
Is it a
is.
VSO or a MSO? There's military
Oh,
service organizations and there's veteran service organizations. So
I thought it was a VSO. I could be wrong.
yeah, I'm a member of them too, life member. So,
Yeah.
you know, but Marine Corps League doesn't lobby a lot though. I mean, they do a little bit, but not as much as some of the others. But I'm talking to Bob Borka, you know that I think I
Mhm.
told you that earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm working to make sure he's informed, engaged, and they can jump in as well, because we all need to be unified anyways. And so
Yeah. Absolutely.
as a fellow Marine, I want to make sure I keep Bob in the loop on things. But you have other organizations like Blue Star Families, MOA, National Military Family Association. They're not VSOs, they're MSOs or family
Okay.
organizations, and they're in the game too. They just focus primarily on active duty.
Mhm.
But everybody's starting to kind of bleed over and work in veterans and military space. So um,
Right.
it really depends on Iraq Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, IAVA. Um, that's another VSO, not as large. I think they're maybe 40,000 strong, something like that,
Okay.
maybe more than that. But still, that's kind of our generation,
Yeah.
GWAT. And so, there's a lot of different orgs out there, but the main ones that I deal with and that are the largest are uh, American Legion, VFW, DAV. Uh,
Right.
I think AMVETS,
Yep. I'm a
AMVETS,
life member of all of them.
yeah, same. AMVETS, I don't know what their numbers are right now. They're shrinking a little bit, but they're also out there. You got Korean War veterans, and then there's Jewish veterans, Jewish war veterans. There's a lot
There's
of
the
different
Purple Heart.
military order, the Purple Heart. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, we work with them, and then we also have Gold Star mothers, American Gold Star mothers, Gold Star wives, a little bit of everything out there. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I ever told you, but there's over 40,000 VSOs in America.
Are you serious?
Yes, over
40,000.
40,000 organizations that call themselves VSOs, MSOs, or some kind of related affiliated version of that.
Yeah.
Congressionally chartered, there's very few.
Yeah.
That is a difference. And then there's another category that's called VA recognized
Mm,
service organizations. So congressionally chartered, then you have VA recognized organizations, then you have MSOs and then others, family orgs. There's a whole bunch of categories, but
wow, that's very interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So
So how does a veteran know which one is an actual legit organization and which one is scammers or are they?
yeah, so that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. One, I would focus on going to the VA website, and because not everybody can be chartered by Congress like we are, which is a whole different level because not only are we accountable to them, they are also endorsed by us. And that's a specific, really good status to have. But when you go to the VA website and you search for VA recognized organizations or service or veteran organizations, I forget what the term is, there's a list of about, 30, 40, 50. There's also some reports out there, research by VA that'll identify that for you. And, obviously new organizations spring up, so it may not be up to date, but if you ever have any questions, reach out to one of the big VSOs or one of the more commonly known ones, and they can kind of help you navigate through that. Um, when you start getting into shady organizations, things like that, that you got to be careful that's when you're talking about any type of predatory for-profit organizations. That's where you have to be careful to make sure you know what you're doing, what you're paying for, and is there a free option,
Right.
especially when it comes to your benefits. And uh, like I said earlier, VFW, DAV, American Legion, Wounded Warrior, PVA, we all offer some kind of free benefits services. Um,
Wounded
so
Warrior Project.
yeah, Wounded Warrior, thank you. Yes, you do too. And so, and there's others, but out of the larger group, right, the more well-known group, that what Mark, Wounded Warrior and those that I mentioned are kind of the core entities that you can go to, and they'll give you some straight answers. Hopefully, I think they would.
Yeah. Well, I got to give a shout out to the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. The gentleman that I went over and was working with, he got me over the hump where I needed to be. So, he did a fantastic job in telling me what I needed to do and how to focus on it and actually get the help. So, but yeah, he did a fantastic job out here.
Yeah, awesome. And there's a lot of good VAs. The problem with VA is they're not on an integrated system yet. There's a saying, if you've been to one VA, you've been to one VA. Because they're not all talking, they're not all networked together. MH Genesis was fielded on the DoD side, but we're trying to get the system over on the Veterans Affairs side to be talking all on one network. But there's 140 something VA medical centers, and there's 140 different systems, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Getting that all together is going to be a nightmare.
it sure is.
Yeah.
It already, the electronic health record alone already has, I think 60 billion invested in it. It's not even fielded. It's only been fielded at, like, I think, three or four
Wow.
centers. Yeah. So
Holy.
yeah. So, back to that budget discussion, that's another thing that I haven't even talked about is EHRM fielding is going to be massively expensive, but you got to tie that service member's record
Yeah.
completely into his veteran experience. And you can't do that if these systems aren't talking, if they're not fielded, if they're not up to date and already
Correct.
functioning. 200,000 veterans get out every year, or service members get out every year.
Hmm.
And so that's a massive infusion of new people that come into the system. I don't know how many of those go into VA, very, very few, but it's better than it was years ago, especially with the toxic exposure
Right.
that we have now. So
Yeah. Good point. Well, Mario, we're starting to kind of come to an end here. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we kind of go round robin again and get these words of wisdom out? Or
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but um, I need veterans to get the word out to other veterans that the VSOs are really taking the fight to the front lines in an apolitical sense. At least most of us are. And if you have questions, if you see veterans in distress or in need, take action. Don't wait. Don't dismiss their feelings, and ask for help from one of us, and we'll jump on it. It's really a good opportunity for us to unite and take the lead in uniting the nation because we are very split up right now.
I like it. All right, well let's hit up words of wisdom real quick. Vic, what do you got?
See here. How about it's not enough to be busy, so are ants. The question is, what are we busy about?
I like it.
And if we're going to go out and spread the word, it's results matter. It's I had to tell my daughter when she was about 15 years old, the older you get, the less people care about the effort that you put in. And once you become an adult, nobody cares about the effort. No, everybody wants results. So, effort does count, but effort doesn't put money on the table. Effort doesn't or I guess doesn't solve a lot of things. What are your results? So it's what are you busy about?
That was good. That was good. Mario, you want to go next, or you want Mark to go next?
Mark can go last, man. He's earned that spot. I found one that's pretty cool. I think it's very appropriate, and I put my own twist to it because of what's going on. On the other side of a storm is the strength that comes from having navigated through it. Raise your sails and pump your oars. Let's go.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, Mark. You know what tomorrow is, right?
The high holy day of St. Patrick's Day tomorrow.
That's right.
That's right.
And you've been giving us a bunch of prayers and stuff,
And I've got another Irish blessing.
All right.
All right.
May your path be straight and gentle. May you never go astray. May good fortune always follow you each step along your way. May you know only happiness, good memories, and good cheer. And may God's blessings bring you everything that your heart holds dear. And if you can't remember that, may you live as long as you want and never want as long as you live.
Ooh.
And
That's a good one.
I'll just repeat, since we're talking about helping each other out, I'll just repeat that one I said the other day. When you are rich in friends, you're poor in nothing.
That's true.
That's right.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, guys, thanks for coming on and doing this again. Mario, you're welcome anytime you want to come on and talk and provide information and just kind of give us a lowdown on what things have been happening up there in the DC area. So, but you're always more than welcome.
Awesome. It's my honor to be here and be invited back. That makes me feel better.
Definitely. Hey, we really appreciate it, Mario, giving us the straight scoop, because like you said, there's just so much bad information out there about how bad everything is and how this administration is just ruining everything.
That's right. Yeah, there's all kinds of bad information out there.
Not everyone has Trump delight syndrome.
Delight syndrome.
Oh my gosh, I love it. All right. To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, need help, anything like that, make sure that you reach out. The VA does have great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. Mario, Mark, Vic, they all care about you. The whole veteran community does as well. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies that you served with. Ask them how they're doing. If they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right. One last time. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate all of you. To all the listeners, stay motivated. Change your socks.